Good afternoon to you. 4:06. It's the Joel Natale Show. We're live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here. And with us for his monthly meeting is the county executive of the county of Erie, Pennsylvania, Brenton Davis. County Executive Davis, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Joel. How are you?
Happy New Year to you. It's a big year for you. 2025.
Every year's a big year. Go big or go home, right?
I guess so. Let's pick up where we left off, because when you were last on, you came on, and we were still dealing with Snowmageddon. I mean, that was a lot of snow that we were dealing with. We had, really unprecedented connections with people like, the PennDOT secretary was on the ground here. Josh Shapiro declaring an emergency. You declared an emergency. The mayor declared an emergency. Bringing in private contractors, bringing in. Did I tell you this? I had like a PennDOT snowplow and a grader. Like, the grader was bigger than like the Cape Cods that are on my block in the city in the 5th Ward. This grader's coming down my street to tear up, all that packed ice and snow. It's like, that is a remarkable, that was something to see, right? So anyway, all that stuff, how did it all shake out? Like, we finally kind of got ahead of it once the melt hit.
Well, I mean, that's really what good governance is about. For the first time, that's the reality of why I created the Fusion Cell. I mean, these were our economic development folks that were up there running the show on the ground in concert with public safety and all the municipalities working together. So I mean, that's really part of that vision of really tying governments together, not just a municipal level providing services to residents, but connecting these municipalities directly through the county, right to the state and federal government. And you saw that. I mean, we had plows on the ground within 6-8 hours of really my disaster declaration. And, you're talking for a piece of equipment that came as far as Philadelphia, just getting on the horn, activating PennDOT, getting these folks, moving, and providing the contracted services, the big loaders, calling for mutual aid. We had places as far as Corey, Franklin, Clarion, service providers, some of the bigger players, Lindy, McClymonds, those folks bringing the large loaders. But we had almost 110 pieces of equipment once the dust settled. We brought in 110 additional pieces of equipment that ran 24 hours a day. You look at that, I think it was over 20,000 additional hours above and beyond what municipalities, the city, PennDOT, and all those do just to keep our roads clear, plus their overtime. So, you look at the only comparison is we got essentially this close to the same amount of snow as we got in 2017. And only we got it in a 24-hour period as opposed to over 5 or 6 days. Mm-hmm. But what took 2 weeks to dig out in 2017, we were able to do in 5 days. Mm-hmm. So it was bringing in those additional resources and, utilizing our municipal gap fund through economic development to pay for all of it. That's the beautiful part, standing up the emergency shelters, taking care of the emergency towing, coordinating all the disaster work. All this comes at a great cost.
Sure.
And you're able to, essentially apply funds that are meant for it. And that's what this is all about, is providing these services.
Again, I'm a lay person here, so I don't really understand how the funding streams work. Mm-hmm. And there actually was some news made because you were able to do a deal with the Gaming Revenue Authority. So explain how that worked. Did you get actual cash from the state as part of the emergency declaration?
No, so that doesn't, so people think like, oh, there's a disaster declaration.
Yeah.
And they think the state and the feds come in here and swoop in and save the day. Not at all like that.
Okay, that's news.
That 100%. So, you get Pennsylvania Emergency Management. So you got a handful of folks that sat in our command center. You got state police. You got these other folks coordinating services. But really, I think the difference here is county leadership getting out there, helping the municipalities instead of every municipality just kind of suffering through and weathering the storm and making it happen, providing the resources and tactically deploying them. To me, it's very much like as an infantry officer, deploying resources, in a combat environment. It's no different. So you just look at this. You provide the resources when and where they need them. You manage it. You triage it. and really make it turning a disaster into a major or a minor even inconvenience. We didn't lose a single life. And I mean, there wasn't a single vehicle on vehicle crash that created a casualty during that. And it's because of the decisions we made to slow down the traffic. You know, we dealt with the absolute crap storm of New York Thruway shutting down and routing people through Route 89 and 5 and causing a disaster there. But we even managed poor choices from New York State and got these folks out, got them housed, got the shelters stood up. So we utilized that American Rescue Plan money. We utilized it through the municipal gap fund that sits in planning, and that's how we provide assistance to all these residents in the townships to put millions of dollars into their community and infrastructure, and that's what keeps their taxes low. You know, and to me, I've been unapologetic, you know, on my stance towards ECRA. We voted on this in 2008. We voted to have the casino here under the premise that it was to keep our taxes low. It wasn't to fund political pet projects. It wasn't for any of that. So, I mean, really being able to make a deal with ECRA to allow them to keep the $329,000 of the contract that I canceled just because they weren't able to utilize the contracted services line. So basically I made a trade. I let ECRA keep $329,000. In order to do that, they had to give me $500,000. I mean, I'd say that's winning, you know, and that's making good on that promise to these taxpayers that we will use casino gaming revenue to lower your taxes. That's municipal services, like the $2.5 million in my budget in 2025. Instead of feel-good projects and pet projects that normally go to members of council and their cronies, we've invested $2.5 million in this budget for EMS services. That's putting ambulances, that's continuing the EMS scholarships, that's putting trained people in the seats, in apparatuses, trained, ready, and able when and where you need them 24/7. That's what we need.
Did that pass the budget, the EMS?
That did pass the budget.
Okay, I'm just making sure. And we'll talk about the budget in a little bit. The issue with this, I guess I'm still not understanding why when you have a rainy day fund and it rains like cats and dogs like it did. I mean, why isn't there an unencumbered pot?
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
So I've done 2 budgets now.
Yeah.
You know, or this would be the 3rd. And each time I've went down, this would be the first time, but the last 2 times we went down, we attempted to make a public safety emergency management fund. We proposed it, and council has shot that down every single time. When you need the money, come down and get it. It just doesn't work that way. Now you can see that we should have, I mean, I'm of the opinion, we should have $1 million unencumbered in a disaster fund. Because think about this. I mean, it's easy
It would be the first dollars, right? It'd be the quick
go out
dollars.
the door. So,
Yeah.
so under a disaster declaration, I have the ability. I mean, essentially, I could have just spent $1 million out of the reserve fund on my own under disaster declaration. But I think you need to have that earmarked every year, and I think that we should build a fund. You know, start off with $1 million, and then maybe you put $250,000 in it every year. Because here's the reality. It's easy to go through $1 million. I mean, PennDOT invested, I think, close to $3 million. The governor did for PEMA and the additional resources that came here. I don't even know what the final number is.
So they did put money in through their channel.
I mean, essentially, because I mean, obviously, you got to pay the overtime,
right?
And that's what when they talk about, like, the governor released, hey, we're coming with $3 million. That's not cutting a check for $3 million. There's no disaster money. We had people calling in, well, my roof collapsed, or this, that, and how can I get to that money? That's not money for residents. I mean, your insurance has to cover those things.
Yeah.
What that does is that covers the emergency management people, that covers the state police, that covered some of the towing, that covered PennDOT folks, it covered the fuel, the salt. I mean, all the trucking, the hotels. There are some large costs. But I mean, you see with just a simple snow disaster how you can spend millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
So county government having $1 million or $2 million in a line item ready to go. So imagine. I look at lessons learned. You know, it's things like, you know, folks are critical, like, you know, public safety and the county executive. We have public safety badges for safety. You have to have lessons learned. And in the military, I learned that lessons are written in blood. And so you take the wildfires of Maui. When emergency responders, county government decision makers can't get close enough to make decisions, to deploy assets, to declare disasters, to get those resources going, that's how you lose an entire county, like you saw, or entire cities in places like Maui. You look at, imagine if you delay, every day you delay in the snow removal, seconds count. So I look at take our colleagues down in the Carolinas.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Asheville.
there's people still living in tents and sheds and things of that nature. No power, no roads, lost everything. I mean, what do you think $2 million is going to do countywide, or the tornado of 1985?
Sure.
You know, I mean, there's different things, and you've got to look at what are the lessons learned. What are the after action reviews that I read? Like, take the shootings in Buffalo, take the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, all these different public emergencies. You know, I talk to these folks. These are colleagues. These are friends of mine. What went wrong? What happened? What was supposed to happen? What didn't happen? Where did you trip? Where did you fumble? Because I'm going to learn from you, and we're not going to do that. You know, and it's things like being able to appropriately identify your myself, two, my emergency management. Because there's folks who will say, well, why do you need this? I mean, show them your county ID. And I'm like, it looks like a library card. You know what I mean? So take, for instance, the shooting near my house on Gore Road.
Yeah.
You know, that was Troop E, troopers, that when that individual had a shootout, a couple hundred rounds fired in a neighborhood right here in Erie County in Bell Valley. And going there to provide them the resources, the lights, and the things that they need to I guess, do the crime scene work.
Right.
That was Clarion state troopers that were there on the scene because Troop E in Erie was involved in the shooting and couldn't investigate it.
Right.
So, I mean, have you not had any way to appropriately identify yourself? It's just barriers for getting things done. You know, things like the train derailments. My colleagues, them being able to get hazmat people. I mean, people don't know who you are walking around. Right. So, I mean, it's learning from those lessons, you know, being able to appropriately identify yourself as a decision maker and being able to bypass the law enforcement protocol, you know, because it's their job to stop people. It's
Absolutely.
for their protection.
Yeah.
And you need to say, hey, this is who I am. This is legit. Let's keep it moving. And obviously, they don't know my folks either. But having the money to activate to be able to pay for this, if the tornado of 85 were to happen again, $2 million would be a drop in a bucket. I
There's
mean,
no doubt.
within days.
Let me ask you again, what was the biggest thing that you feel like you got right, and what was the thing that you feel like the response was lacking when it comes to Snowmageddon?
Well, I mean, the county has no role in snow removal. You know, I mean, so to me, it's not sitting there waiting. Like, you know, you have to prepare to self-rescue, right? And I look at my colleagues.
So you weren't getting calls, or were municipalities saying, "Hey, we need help here now"?
So it was us reaching out to them, and the reason is that's proactive leadership. I mean, I looked at the weather. Yeah. I already had my EMA folks when there's an event coming. I mean, we have Director Grappy. I mean, they watch this stuff. It's 24/7.
Well, hold on a second. Let me understand this because you do have the emergency management. You know, you have the control room. You have that ground
100%.
zero. So why wouldn't the county have a role?
So when I say in snow removal specifically,
correct?
Like, because I don't own a single road. So snow removal,
you don't have a plow.
Snow removal is not a responsibility of county government. You know, I mean,
but the emergency
management piece. Now, I mean, we could have been like, hey, you know, this is the decisions that we're making, kind of in the past, and just let the townships slowly dig themselves out, like they did in 2017 with no assistance. You know, but that's the wrong answer. You know, I mean, to me, it's taxpayers pay this money. This is why we have a casino. This is why we have gaming revenue. This is why we brought it here. Yeah. You should have this money ready and willing, because if you can't deploy that money during a disaster, or you can't deploy that money for an ambulance or for fire trucks and saving lives, then what the heck are we doing? Yeah. So, I mean, really, in terms of just being proactive, the fact that we were there in the command center, had everybody on standby, on call. I mean, when it started escalating, we just systematically started bringing in the folks that we needed to deploy the resources that we needed. All the pre-checks were done. You know, we already have pre-planned responses. You know, so I mean, it's just a matter of execution and supervision. And just,
what do you think you wish you had, or where do you think you know, we kind of fell short as a community? You think?
I mean, one, we need to have that emergency fund. Okay. I mean, there's absolutely no question about it. You know, you need to have that emergency management fund. Like, I mean, to me, if I had my druthers, I mean, I would have the state legislature write in that, you know, there's $1 million in disaster fund money that, I mean, let's say you cap it. So you cap it at like $5 million. So say every year, casino gaming revenue that's allocated to ECRA, $500,000 goes immediate like we do. We give $1 million to the land bank. Maybe we give $1 million to an emergency disaster recovery fund. And then you have that go until, say, it reaches $5 million. And then maybe you say $5 million's the cap or whatever it is, and then start utilizing it. Because I'm telling you, $5 million is an absolute drop in the bucket. There's people building standard size family living houses, or really nice ones, for $1 million here in town and selling them.
It's unreal.
You know, so I mean, what's $5 million across 300,000 people? It's a drop in a bucket. Is all that's going to do is help us get the wheels in motion earlier and save more lives.
County Executive Brenton Davis is with us here for his monthly meeting. It's 421 on Talk Erie. You've got your radio set at 105.9 Talk Erie WZTE. It's the Joel Natale Show, live and local here on a Tuesday, and we have the County Executive Brenton Davis with us. Let's try. We'll have to. This will be a bit of a conversation, but let's start talking about this budget and this court case where a judge has said that your vetoes that reinstated funds into the budget were improper. Can you just, talk about what your take is on this court ruling? Again, this is the 2023-2024 budget here.
Well, so I mean, I think that's a great point to point out. So that is the 23 and 24 budget. That's not a ruling on 2025. And I think really looking at the nuances of how the judge wrote this, nowhere did he say, yes, this is illegal or what have you. I mean, a lot of times in a court decision, a judge is going to kind of split the baby, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I don't want to speak too much on pending litigation or potential pending litigation. Obviously, I disagree. And I mean, so really to break this down in layman's terms for folks at home, why is this a big deal? One, we're a home rule county. We have a county council. We have a county executive. there's a checks and balances that's supposed to take place. So let's just use one item, one veto item in the previous budgets that were a part of this ruling. And I've talked about it on the show before. Let's say the $1.2 million in adoption revenue that council, for whatever reason decided, hey, we're going to slash this $1.2 million out of the budget. Well, anybody that's done a budget, you have assets and liabilities. That's like a bill, and that's money coming in. So by them cutting that $1.2 million, that's revenue. That's revenue coming in. So they didn't know the difference. They thought by cutting that, they were cutting expenses. No, you just cut a $1.2 million paycheck from the state that was meant to send kids to get provide services for kids to get adopted and kind of pay for their existence. So we had 110 kids that went to 74 loving families. Had I not vetoed that, what are we going to do with every kid getting adopted in Erie County? That's one example. So council had no idea, like many things, that they're just sitting there in a room with a 700 page budget, $600 million, and they're just they're just cutting to cut without any knowledge of the consequences. It's like any one of us getting on an aircraft somewhere and decided to go up into the cabin and just start pushing buttons, flying across the ocean. Like, you're not going to do that. If you don't know what it's doing, you have no business making the cuts, making the adjustments. And that's why a full-time executive administration does that. They're attempting to argue that, okay, you don't have that veto power that technically adds money to the budget. That's all philosophical, in terms of there's not one budget, there's, separate budgets or whatever they're going to try to argue.
Let me stop a second, because there is, it is kind of foundational that that the council holds the purse, the legislature holds the purse, right?
So I would argue yes, and here's the funny thing. So if council holds the purse and they're responsible for holding the purse strings, then why is it anytime there's a tax increase, they want to say it's the executive that did it? Well, you're the ones that hold the purse strings. I can only administer money, right? So at least we've got that out in the open.
That's true.
The only thing they can do is like this year, I vetoed the tax increase. Several members of council, 3 members of council, actually 4, Drexel, Horton, Scatella, and trying to think of the other ones.
Copeland.
And Copeland wanted to increase taxes in Erie County, and I vetoed that. That's why we have those checks and balances, right? So at the end of the day, that you have to have that. That's what's necessary for government. Yes, they ultimately hold the purse strings, but it's up to the administration to administer.
Correct.
And that's things like the DEI money. Like, yeah, you can appropriate it, but you can't make me spend it. The idea that because you appropriate something means it has to be spent. Well, okay, then every dollar that we spend in wages and overtime that we budget for, I have to spend it by the end of the year? No, it returns. So there's certain discretion. And I think I've really pushed back on government. It was when I was a carpenter coming in here and cut off T-shirts and, chainsaw and oil-covered pants from the job site and going back to work.
Usually you had sawdust on your body.
Listen, because I came from work and I went back to work.
Right.
That's just who I am. But I'm a change agent. There's been no doubt about it, 100% a change agent. Because for a long time, you've had the status quo of Erie, the political power structure, awarding cronyism, doing what they want to do. And I've said it time and time again. It's Erie doing Erie stuff. And where has that gotten us? For the last 40 years, it's managed decline.
We got to take the hard break at the bottom of the hour. The county executive is with us, Brenton Davis. Stay with us. It's Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show on a Tuesday. You're tuned to Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show, 103.3, 105.9 FM here on January 7th. It's the first Tuesday of the month, and the county executive is with us, Brenton Davis. And we're going through some of the news-making headlines and things, and kind of what a strategy is here for 2025. Let me just finish up here with this budget controversy here. Again, it's pending litigation. You have a solicitor. The county council has a solicitor. Is there a way that we can get to some kind of mutual understanding on how the budget works and how the vetoes should work, I guess?
Well, I mean, I think the home rule charter is pretty clear. And I think what comes down to is what you have as a council that is very clear to veto. They need 5 votes to override the executive's veto. Right. That is the process. That is in black and white. That is county law. What they're doing in saying that it's illegal is, say, for instance, there's an item that four members, these 4 Democrats that wanted to raise people's taxes, if they don't like it and they realize, hey, we don't have 3 votes or, the 5 votes to override
override, yeah.
So what they're doing is they're striking it from the agenda. So they only need 4 votes to strike it from the agenda. Mm-hmm. So what they're doing by striking it is saying, hey, we're not going to take a vote on this. We're not even going to vote on it. We're striking to remove this from the agenda. Well, the home rule charter is clear. It says that you take action with X amount of time or else my budget stands. So it's our position, and it's very clear. If you do not get 5 votes to override my veto, whatever is proposed stands. And there's some nuances that the judge took a different interpretation on. And hey, that's the way the judicial system works. I mean, anybody in America right now understands. I mean, look at President-elect Trump. How many times has that guy been in a courtroom? Mm-hmm. I mean, you look at it. I mean, this is just. You look at Erie County, the Democrats in Erie County are following the federal Democratic playbook. And I'm not all of them, but I would say this majority on council, I mean, they're following the failed Democratic federal playbook. I mean, it didn't work. America is ready for change. Erie County elected President-elect Donald Trump to be that change agent, the same way I believe they elected guys like Dan Laughlin and myself. We're outsiders. We have no favoritism, no cronies, no family members. I don't have anybody like that in local government. I've only got a few relatives even live here. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's about doing what's right at the end of the day. You can't be bought. You can't be bullied. You can't be pushed around, and we won't back down. And that's what taxpayers vote for, that common sense, reasonable government that gets stuff done. Look no further than Snowmageddon. And keep in mind, a lot of people don't know, that was followed or preceded by 38 wildfires across the county,
yeah, that was crazy.
10 days prior. Yeah. So we were out there fighting fires in the middle of the night, providing resources, doing what we needed to do, giving these guys their relief, helping them, running chainsaw, whatever the heck we needed to do, we were out there doing it. That's what people elect for elected representatives, or that's what they should elect. It's not somebody that's going to, half-ass manage it from their basement or whatever you do it. They want somebody that's going to put their boots on, get out there in the thick of things, make the decisions, take decisive action, and get stuff done that protects people, protects property, and saves lives.
So just to put a bow on this, your sense is that with all of the vetoes of 2015, if they were just struck from the council's agenda, they're still in force.
So 2025, yeah.
I'm sorry, 2025.
Taking us back 10 years.
I wasn't even around. But in 2025, right.
So absolutely, you take no action, then the veto stands. And I mean, to me, this comes down to, you got to remember, and the thing I've learned about government, anybody who knows attorneys and politicians, they love to bend words, right? Mm-hmm. And you sit there and you watch these lawyers make money here, arguing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I mean, whether it's DEI's attorneys, ECRA's attorneys, all these people trying to fight to keep control of this money, to keep the thumb and the foot on the neck of the taxpayer. And they're coming at all angles. And I fully expect 2025 is going to be a tough year. Whoever steps up to run is going to get run over. I'm going to tell you that right now. And to me, at the end of the day, I'm unapologetic when it talks about standing up for the taxpayer. When I vetoed that tax increase that 4 of these Democrats were trying to force, well, obviously they know the veto takes 5 because
Right.
they couldn't
The override,
they couldn't
yeah.
strike that from the agenda. So that's really what it's come about. Is they're trying to pull, I would say, taking bad legal advice from their council solicitor, who thinks he's the 8th member of council. Right. He does more talking than some of these council members do. Anybody that watches this knows this. This is not good government. I'm fighting to get the system back as it's meant to be, as the charter was written in 1978, with checks and balances. If the executive does not have veto power and council can strike things from the agenda that they don't like without the votes, you don't have checks and balances. What you have is a legislative body that thinks that they can also administer. Well, you might as well have a county manager at that point. And then they can that county manager will be forced by law as an employee to do whatever stupidity that this council votes for. That's not what it's intended to do. And I'm unapologetic fighting for that, because taxpayers deserve an intelligent government that's reasonable and that gets stuff done.
Okay. Can you weigh in as much as you can on the DEI lawsuit? Where does that stand, in your opinion?
I mean, I think that comes down to the same thing. I mean, again, this is something, keep in mind, I did not veto it. I didn't veto this. You take the $1.5 million that was there. I had the opportunity to veto, and I didn't. I mean, but you got to realize DEI is not in compliance. They're not in compliance. I mean, they still have reports that are outstanding. I've said this all along. They're not in compliance. So, I mean, here's the thing. I look at this from a contractor's point of view. Imagine you hire a contractor and you say, hey, look, I'm gonna hire you to remodel this room for, say, $25,000. Do me a new kitchen, $25,000.
Yeah.
If that person,
that actually would be a good deal,
right?
That'd
be a great deal. So you agree upon that price, whatever it is, $25,000, but the contractor fails to do 3/4 of what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And before even getting done with that kitchen, there's an outside party, vis-a-vis council, trying to force us to say, hey, listen, I know they're not done with the kitchen. They haven't done it. It's all jacked up. They're not following any of these procedures. But you know what? Let's go to court and try to force you to say, hey, why don't you have them build you a brand new house next door too for $1.5 million? And that's the reality. I'm just saying, look, taxpayers deserve accountability. As a candidate, I ran saying there's that lack of accountability. It's these cronies. Now, keep in mind, you got to look at following the money, right? Kathy Dahlkemper tried the, so-called, and I've heard this time and time again, even Gary Lee, that's the director, former director of administration. DEI was promised $10 million in the budget. Wait a minute. So you're saying when I went around in Project Resolve, remember the outcry from the Democrats that said the executive cannot promise money until it comes to DEI? Well, now the shoe's on the other foot. Oh no, Kathy promised this money. So this was her number 2 guy at the county. Now you magically created an organization, promised it $10 million, which is nearly half of the Davis administration $26 million, right?
Yeah.
She didn't promise it $10 million of the first tranche. She promised it $10 million in the future that she hadn't even received. Lets her number 2 guy from the county take over DEI, which makes $150,000 a year plus benefits. Now, keep in mind, that's $50,000 or a little close to $50,000 more than what I make for running an entire county, 1,500 employees, and a $600 million a year budget. So he makes far more plus benefits. So, I mean, that's Erie doing Erie stuff. How do you be a part of the administration that creates the entity, gives the funding, and now you jump from one lily pad to the other and you're putting that money in your pocket, and there's not something fishy about this? Hell yes, I'm going to fight about this. Because this is Erie doing Erie stuff. This is exactly what I was elected to do. I might not be successful fighting in the court, and they can have a court order come down and say, hey, you're listening, you're going to give it to them. And sometimes the best you can do is try to put reasonable constraints. The taxpayers deserve to have accountability for their money. The first contract that they signed, they didn't report on, didn't have a budget, didn't have a program, didn't have anything other than, hey, this is going to benefit the BIPOC community. There's literally nothing in it. Like, who on earth is going to sign a contract with a contractor and say, hey, yeah, I'm going to build you something. I can't tell you how much it's going to cost, and I don't know what it is, but when the bill's done, you're going to pay me. I mean, that's literally what DEI is trying to sell us. Even now, they still don't have a plan. They still don't have a plan.
I think that's the point that concerns me is you've kind of made it a point that when we're making investments that there should be matching funds, or you invest $4 million to get $20 million or whatever. Try to get a 3x, 4x, 5x return on investment. We haven't really seen that from the diverse.
Well, not only have you not
Erie.
seen it, but I mean, one, they awarded money to a convicted cocaine dealer trying to run a kids program out of his gym. Like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, you're going to give money to a convicted cocaine dealer. You know, granted, they recalled it after, you know, they awarded the money, and then 10 days later it came out he was convicted of dealing cocaine from his gym. But you have to look at the other businesses that they gave money to. You know, they're not doing the reporting. You know, DEI sent me an email saying, hey, we're not going to follow this up. Well, that's federal law. You're basically telling me you're not going to follow the federal law, but yet I should give you more money, that the taxpayers are on the hook. If they fail to report this and the federal government comes calling and says, hey, Erie County, you haven't met your requirements.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm just trying to hold them accountable to federal law. I haven't even added any kind of restraints of like, hey, how do you
leverage them?
How do you keep them in the left and right limits? You know, and at the end of the day, I mean, they've proposed in the most recent proposals, they've used 38%. So out of $3.5 million that they've been given, they've used over $1.1 million in salaries, offices. They just moved down to a waterfront office here in the Bayfront. You know, I mean, paying all these salaries. So if it's really about moving, you know, disadvantaged people forward, why wouldn't you support saying, hey, listen, let's do this like I'm saying. Let's do this without using any money in administrative costs. Let's turn that $1.5 million into $3.5, $4.5 million. Let's find other community partners, and let's not let anybody stick their fingers in the cookie jar, but the people that need the benefit from this. And, you know, if anybody's out there that's a disadvantaged community, BIPOC community, minority community, new Americans, whatever this money's meant for, I would ask them, how has this money benefited you? Because I can tell you, I talk to people every week. They're like, well, I didn't see any of that money. It's not helping us. It's gone to the same people doing the same things. You look at where we've done. I mean, you got certain kids' gyms and different things that have gotten millions of dollars, and the foundations aren't even out of the ground. It's the same old people doing Erie stuff, getting the money, and they're getting rich on it.
What's 2025 look for you? Again, you're up for re-election. You're about to announce, I guess I saw something on Facebook.
Yeah,
right?
So January 16th, we have the re-announcement at Frelo Industries. It's going to be a re-announcement / fundraiser. That's going to be my kickoff. But to me, I mean, I've always said that, like, the campaigning part, like, I don't worry about that. I firmly believe as a county executive or any elected official, like, what you've done should speak for itself. You know, the battles that you fought, the investments you made, things like Project Resolve, Project Neptune, the Municipal Gap Fund. I mean, putting tens of millions of dollars out here in the townships where it's never been, and equalizing. You know, being a county executive for the entire county, not just the city of Erie, addressing things like homelessness, the tiny homes village, turning the work release building into a homeless shelter. You know, giving over $1 million for mental health for kids coming out of COVID, unmasking our kids day one in office, lifting the mask mandate. You know, the things we did with LECOM at the height of COVID. I took office at the height of COVID, the highest point ever. And, you know, folks said, oh, this is going to be disastrous. Well, look what we did. Intelligent investment with community partners, with community experts, and we opened our economy immediately overnight on January 3rd. You know, it's those things. When folks look back and say, Snowmageddon, the fires, COVID, you know, the investment in the Fairview Business Park, turning our business climate around, you know, building up the community college for the allied health with helping the health systems, the welding programs, the trade programs, the things we're doing with previously incarcerated folks coming from jail, helping them get jobs. You know, it's things like that. I don't worry about campaigning. You know, when you see folks out there that want to sit there and talk, I would pose a challenge. Anybody that wants to run, one, get prepared to get ran over. But two, what have you done? What is your resume? Like, to me, I'm not worried about running against anybody else. I've got a whole mountain of resumes and a whole mountain of accomplishments behind us that we've done in 3 years. I can firmly say and definitively say that there's not been an executive since 1978 that has put forward the amount of change and the amount of investment in this county than what I have. And it's because we've been able to leverage money like never before. One example of that would be we hired contractors in terms of grant writing. You know, we took $750 and got a $250,000 ambulance paid for West County for the ambulance out there. That's $450 for $250,000. What's that return on investment? You know, those are the things when I say, look, you need to have full court press. You need to have this fusion cell. You need to have these grant writers. You need to be tied into Washington, D.C. You need to be tied into our partners in Canada, your partners in Harrisburg. And folks are like, well, why are you all over doing these things? It gives us the front track. There's a reason why Mayor Tullio years ago was able to build the things in the city that he was able to do. One, I mean, was it maybe perhaps some mafia ties you hear here and there. But at the end of the day, it was all about relationships. You know, it's all about relationships, no matter who's in office. I had a great relationship with the Biden administration. I've already talked with some of the Trump transition folks. I've got several folks that I served with in the military that are in Trump's cabinet. You got Tulsi Gabbard, who I went to Alabama Military Academy with. You know, you've got all these folks that, like Lee Zeldin, you know, he's an Army Reserve officer. You know, he's taking over in the Treasury. You know, you have all these different folks that you can tap for resources. Relationships matter. Being able to leverage outside of your weight class, that is the key. And, I mean, there's not going to be another American Rescue Plan money. So I tell folks, like, look, we talked about the moonshot moment. You heard it throughout my campaign. You heard it when Titus ran. Everybody talked about it. But look at the communities that have squandered it. I mean, I would say that, I mean, the city of Erie got $72 million. I would say point to one thing that the city's been able to accomplish by not leveraging the money. You know, look at the first tranche of $26 million that the Dahlkemper administration put out there. I'm in office and I can't point to one thing that I'd say, oh my goodness, this is what they did with this $26 million. You know, I've been able to leverage this 4 and 5 times over, and we've still got money that's still waiting to go out. You know, so, I mean, it's really about this. How can you make money to make money? You know, and that's bringing that common sense entrepreneurial spirit into this office and being unapologetic about your vision, where we need to go, and how we turn this community around. And we got to fight like hell to do it.
But does it always need to fight, or can you do some stuff with sugar? I'm thinking about, we have these authorities and we have these, you know, we have these teams that they're subject matter experts.
I would beg to differ. So, I mean, there's very few that I would say that are subject matter experts, because you got to look at it. These are all political appointments. At the end of the day, so let's just take the composition of council. You look at the chair vote that just happened. You've got a nomination that went up for Rock Copeland, in which council voted against him 3-4. Then you had another Democrat nominate Scatella, and that went 4-3. So clearly, our own council is divided between just the philosophies of the extreme far left. I mean, you've got 4 of these individuals that are clearly far left. I mean, and we've seen the mandate of the electorate. Even folks like Mr. Winarski and Mr. Scatella are breaking ranks from that. Yeah. You know, or the 3 that are extreme, as far as the 3 that are extremely far left. You know, so you look at this. This is 100% worth fighting for. You know, I didn't come here to play the games. When you talk about can you do things with sugar, that doesn't make headlines. Nobody says, wow, the county executive walked in here, everybody sang Kumbaya, like we effectively administered a program. And, I mean, take, for instance, like the...
So you're just saying the stuff is happening.
It's not news.
It's not news.
It's not news. I mean,
all right, well, that's
so I mean, think about that.
That's reassuring to me.
And I would say this. We have a $600 million a year budget. Yeah. And then look at the things that you talk about.
Right.
The $1 million $1.5 million for DEI.
Yeah.
It's
the little stuff.
It's the little stuff. You don't talk about how we effectively deliver almost $500 million a year in social service money.
I was going to say, we should be grateful that we don't have the Office of Children and Youth in the headlines anymore, or you know, some of the things that we've had trouble with over the years.
And there's a reason. Because it's all about a leadership. It's all about accountability. It's all about putting the right people in the right places, giving them the appropriate amount of leeway to do what they need to do and the discretion, but also working as a team so they know, hey, like, this is where I need to tap the boss to get a decision. You know, or just me knowing, hey, look, you're the expert. What do you guys think? Give me the overs and unders. This is the consequences. You bring in your attorney if you need to. You bring in your accountant if you need to. What does this look like? You read your gauges and you make a decisive the decision and you move as a team, just like we do as soldiers on the battlefield. Nobody moves on their own. You know exactly what decisions you can make and what you can't make, and there's a reason why you don't see that. I mean, you're always going to see, and to me, again, this is all about these federal politics, these lawsuits.
Yeah.
Is all this is to do is make headlines. You don't think they tried to raise taxes simply as a political shot in my re-election year? Come on. Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. This is like the junior political playbook of the failed extreme liberal agenda. You know, there's a reason why Jim Wirtz had his tail handed to him at the ballots by Senator Laughlin. People are voting against this silliness. I mean, this is a time where the pendulum's swinging back to the common sense middle. And I mean, that's where guys like Dan Laughlin and I are at. You know, or guys like Jim Wynorski, you know, they're Democrats, you know, common sense middle. And I had a guy tell me this yesterday. He's like, well, I don't agree with everything that you do. And I said, look, you're not going to. Anybody who's ever been in any kind of relationship or ever had kids or siblings or whatever, go home tonight and say, hey, we're going out for dinner. Where do you want to go?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you can't even decide that sometimes with a significant other where you want to go, and there's two of you.
Exactly.
You know, so how exactly are you going to agree with everything elected official does, and you're one of 300,000 people? And that's why I pointed the guy. I said, look, it's like Ronald Reagan said, you know, if you agree with me 80% of the time, you know, I'm 80% your friend, not 20% your enemy. There's going to be things like, oh, that land deal or all this or all that. Yeah. But philosophically, where do you stand? If you stand up for the taxpayer, you stand up for their wallet, you stand up for delivering the services that they need, getting the loved ones that you need in ambulance when and where you need it, and appropriately funding services. So that way, when that bell rings, and you better believe it, it's going to ring. It rings every hour of every day, somebody needing an ambulance. The same way when Snowmageddon and the wildfires, you're going to elect somebody that you know has a proven record of being there. Not somebody that's going to talk about it, somebody that's going to be about it, make a decision, and solve the issue.
Erie County Executive Brenton Davis, appreciate you taking the time, sir, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.